Okay, can we start?
Yes, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Ankita, the voice is clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we were talking about the constraints faced by government in controlling inflation, right? So we have done with that, and today we will see the impact of inflation and the measurement of inflation. So, right, impact of inflation. Impact of inflation. Okay, so the first impact you can write: a moderate level of inflation stimulate economic growth. A moderate level of inflation stimulate economic growth. You know the reason, right? We have already discussed this point that this, when you go for national income here, this is a price level, and if you see aggregate demand, aggregate supply. So if there is an increase in demand that lead to inflation, that is what we have seen. So let's see, there is an increase in demand. So that lead to inflation, but at the same time you can see the price is increasing, but at the same time growth also increasing. So a moderate level of inflation is considered as good for the growth, because it shows what? It shows demand, and demand means now there is an incentive for the firms to produce more. So more production will be there, because the profitability of firms will increase, so production will increase, supply will automatically increase, that lead to increase in national income. So it is good for growth, but a moderate level of inflation. Okay, so we need to write the words very carefully whenever you are writing. So you can write the reason: because it will increase the growth, that is what you've written, because it increases profit margin of firms. It increases profit margin of the firms, which encourage them to increase production. Which encourage them to increase production. Second, you can write under that itself: because it indicates that there is no deficiency of demand. You can see here demand is there, right? So it indicates that there is no deficiency of demand in the economy, which improves business environment, which improves business environment or profitability expectation, or profitability expectation, which in turn encourage the firms to invest and increase the productive capacity. The firms to invest and increase the productive capacity. Okay, so next is Phillips curve. See, actually Phillips curve is not important these days, because this theory has been proved wrong by the as per the modern economic theory. But maybe in short term this theory is working, but long term this theory has been proved wrong already. But this can be asked in exam: what is Phillips curve? Okay, so what is the relation between inflation and unemployment according to Phillips curve? This kinds of question can be asked. Only because of that I'm discussing this. So it is given by A.W. Phillips. A.W. Phillips. Okay, so he have collected actual data from UK, England, from 1900 to 1950. So this curve is actually plotted on the basis of actual data. I don't want to talk about the actual data, but I'll show you the curve. So it's like this, like different points he collected, and he made some, he was able to make some curve with this. So he was able to plot a curve like this. Okay, so on the x-axis you can go for unemployment rate. Okay, and then on the y-axis inflation. So this actually gives the relation between unemployment and inflation. So how will you interpret when inflation is there? What is the impact on unemployment?
So it will be less. Unemployment will reduce.
Yeah, you can see here at this point inflation is high, but you can see unemployment is less, right? So what is the connection? It is an inverse relation. So when you can see the inflation is coming down, the unemployment is more. Further it is coming down, here the prices are so low, so unemployment is low. Why? Because inflation is coming down means it is ultimately because of reduction in money supply. Reduction in money supply means demand is coming down, right? Demand is coming down means when demand is coming down, the price is also coming down. So the reverse actually happening, the firm's profitability is decreasing, so firms will cut down the production, so supply will decrease, so the productive capacity, that includes the working force, that will also be reduced. So that is the reason why unemployment rate is actually increasing when inflation coming down. So can I say a good level of inflation is good because it create employment also, right? A moderate level of inflation we have already discussed when we discussed about the impact of inflation. A moderate level of inflation is good for growth. So can I say moderate level of inflation is good for employment opportunity also? Yes, if it is good for growth, it is good for employment, and it is good for removing poverty and all those things. But if inflation is coming down means it affect unemployment, or unemployment rate will increase, growth will be affected, right? Growth will be affected because investment will be affected, and this lead to poverty and all these issues will be there. But this theory, long term, it has been proved wrong with the modern economic theory. When we discuss about the Keynesian theories, I will discuss later. I'll discuss about Keynesian theories later when we discuss about this 1929 Great Depression. That is towards the end. I'll take care of that. I'll take that particular session. All this crisis we'll discuss. Okay. So here, just understand what is Phillips curve. This relation between inflation and unemployment rate is what they can ask you in prelims, and this will work for short term. Okay. So now you can write. So we have written about the positive impact, right? So it is having a positive impact on employment. It is having a positive impact on growth, inflation. So negative impact you can write now. Negative impact. It deteriorates the standard of living. It deteriorates the standard of living of people. It deteriorates the standard of living of the people as it reduces the real purchasing power of money. As it reduces the real purchasing power of money. See, let's say I have 100 rupees with me, okay? So let's say I have 100 rupees this year, and if you imagine there is a 10% of inflation. So what do you mean by this? Whatever goods I can buy with this 100 rupee, if I need to buy this in 2021, I need to pay 110. This is what you mean by inflation. There is an increase of 10% in the price level. So those items which I bought here for 100 rupee, I can buy, or if I need to buy, I need to pay 110. That's what you mean by the real purchasing power is actually coming down, or the value of money is coming down. I've told you in the beginning itself when we defined inflation, it is a persistent increase of prices of commodity. At the same time, you can also explain it in terms of value of money is coming down. Rather than saying that the prices of a commodity is going up, you can say value of money is coming down. So now you need to pay more money to get the same commodity. Commodity remain the same. Okay, but money you need to pay is more. So value of money actually coming down. That's what you mean by real purchasing power has come down. Second point you can write, it is regressive. It is regressive. Why it is called as regressive?
So it is regressive for the weaker section of the society.
Now the question is, when inflation is there, which section will be affected more, rich or poor?
The poorer section.
Poorer section will be affected more, because even this there is 10% increase in the price level. So this is going to affect the poor section very much, because they might be having this 100 rupee income and they are buying those goods for that may be just sufficient for them, but now the price is increased, so they may not be able to buy those food items now, so they may be compromising on those essential items. Okay, so the basic items they may need to compromise, so it will affect the poor more. So you can write there, that is, it affects poor relatively more. It affects poor relatively more because marginal utility of money for them is relatively high. Because marginal utility of money for them is relatively high. Okay. See, when the price is increasing, the poor person is compromising on the basic necessity, but the rich person, he don't have any problem with these basic things. He may be compromising on the luxury only. So that is okay. The poor person's demand is elastic or inelastic?
Inelastic.
Inelastic. So he cannot, cut down anything even if the price is increasing. So his demand is not connected to the price. Whether the price is increasing or decreasing, his demands are for basic things, that is for the survival. So that is inelastic. So he can't do anything with the increase in price. But the rich person, I'm not talking about super rich people. Super rich people also income is inelastic. They are not waiting for the price increase or decrease to buy certain things. But rich people or middle class people, their demand is elastic. Because, if there is a price rise, they think whether to buy or not. Because those things are luxury items. Okay, so third one you can write, it increases inequality. It increases inequality. Reason you can write, it increase profit margin of firms. It increase profit margin of firms. It increase profit margin of firms while it reduce the real income of workers. It increases the profit margin of firms, but it reduces the real income of workers, especially the workers of unorganized sector. Especially the workers of unorganized sector. Okay. See, income remain the same. Let's suppose you used to get 1000 rupee before, or let's take it as 100 rupee before. You used to get 100 rupee only. But in the market, commodities rate has actually changed to 110. So this price change will be beneficial for the firms. Because what is the profit? Profit is actually the selling price minus cost of production, right? So when this 10% extra is there, because of inflation, you are making the profit. So you are on one side, those capitalist profit is actually increasing, or the firm's profit is increasing, but the income of the people, despite the fact that it remained the same, what the word that I've used is, it is relatively, right? What we said, real income is decreasing. Real income means this is an income, it is not changing, but when we talk about real income, when there is an inflation, it should be included in the income. Like if there is an inflation of 10%, income should also be increased by 10%. Then only we can consider it as real, right? But here at this case, the real income is actually very less. Real income is actually decreased. You got it? For example, I'll talk about another situation. Let's suppose you are borrowing from someone. Let's suppose you are borrowing from someone 100 rupee. Okay. Now, after 1 year, the inflation is there, that is 10%. Okay. So, and interest is there, that is 8%. So, how much you will return back after 1 year? You will return back 108 rupee. Okay. But the value of money has come down. Last year, let's suppose this is in 2020 and this is in 2021. So in 2020, what all things you can buy with 100 rupee, for example, XYZ goods. If you need to buy this XYZ goods in 2021, you need to pay 110. But you borrowed 100 and you are giving it back 108. So who's benefiting here? Is the borrower or the lender? Even though you are getting interest. It is a borrower who is benefiting, right? So he can buy XYZ goods here, but when you are giving it back, you are giving it back the money with which you cannot buy this XYZ. So actually, if this is nominal interest, this 8% is nominal interest. Here real interest is nothing. In fact, there is a negative interest. It is actually -2. There is a loss. So if it was 10%, then it is almost equal. That means effectively there is no interest here. If it is 10% interest, you will return 110, and with 110 you can get those goods. So 10% inflation and it is matching, so effectively 0% interest. But if it is, let's say, 15%, okay, then you will return 115, and 110 is what the cost of these goods now. So effectively how much return is there for you for this lending? 5%. This is what you call as real interest rate. So what is this 15%? This is nominal interest rate. If you remember, we have discussed about real national income, nominal national income, etc. So this is nominal interest rate, and despite the fact that you are charging 15%, but what is your return effectively? Only 5%. Why? Because of inflation. So 15%, that is the actual interest that you charge, minus inflation, you will get the real interest rate. Okay, same as the case with real income that I have discussed before. So real income, even though there is no change in income, but real income is actually decreased because 10% increase is there in the cost of items, or the price level is actually increased, or inflation is there. So the wages also should be increased by 10%. Then it is correct. Okay, but here the wages are not increasing. The price of the items or the goods are actually increasing. So is this clear? Next point you write, it retards capital formation. Which adversely affect the economic growth. It retards capital formation which adversely affect economic growth. Why so? Because in case of inflation, I've already told you real income is coming down. So what do you think about the savings? Savings will come down or not? Because now you need to pay more, but your income remained the same. Earlier also income you're getting, and the same income is what you're getting, but your expenditure will increase because of the inflation. So income minus expenditure, if you follow that formula, what will happen with the savings? Savings will come down or not?
Yes, sir.
Savings will come down. So can I say capacity to save, the capacity to save is less now because of inflation? Yes or no? Capacity to save is less. So because of that, savings is less. On the other side, if you see, because of inflation, real interest also coming down. Real interest rate coming down. I've told you why real interest is coming down, right? Let's suppose interest is 15% and you won't get this 15%. You can't say this is real return. If inflation is there 10%, what is the real return? Only 5%. So when inflation is there, depends on inflation, your real interest vary. If 9% inflation is there, your real interest is 6%. If 8% inflation is there, then your real interest is 7%. If 12% inflation is there, then your real interest is actually 3% only. So inflation is more means real interest rate coming down. Any problem with that? Is that okay? Because these are asked as prelims questions directly. So when the real interest rate is coming down, do you think you will invest in bank? Because even if you are going to invest in bank, let's suppose bank is offering you 9% and next year inflation is 10%. Is it worth investing in bank?
No, sir.
No, it is not worth investing in bank. Actually, you are not getting anything. In fact, you are losing. You are losing 1% of what you have now. Because even though bank will give you 109 next year, but if you need to buy those items which you could have bought with the money that you have invested at this year, that is 100, you need to pay 110 now. So there is actually no return. So what you will do, you will either invest in gold or you will invest in shares. Okay, there is no investment possible in bank because real interest rate is less. So that is the reason why the gold import actually increased drastically during the time of inflation. We'll come to that. I'll discuss about that also. So here the real interest rate is decreasing. So what do you think? The willingness to save will also decrease? Because you are not getting any interest. So do you think you will invest in bank? No, right? So what I'm saying is, on one hand, income decrease, so there is no capacity to save. On the other hand, interest decrease, so there is no willingness to save. So both these, this will affect the saving, this will affect the saving. And investment means what? Investment is all about the savings. So who saves? It is a household saves. Who invests? The firms invest. So household saves, and that money will be through banks, and banks or financial institutions, they are just the intermediary between savings and investment. The banks or the financial institutions are basically intermediaries between the savers and the investors. That means households and the firms. So here there is no savings. So what will happen with the investment? Investment will be less. So what will happen with the growth?
Less.
Growth will be less, unemployment will be more, poverty will be more, inequality will be more. Now whatever you feel like, you can write that. Okay, now it is purely subjective. Whatever you want to, you can write here. Only thing is that these technical things that we have to brought in, then after that it is subjective. Whatever is coming to your mind, you can write. Even you can write population will also increase, no problem. Okay, so here neither people have willingness to save nor people have capacity to save. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
So is it like whenever there will be an inflation, that real interest will come down, or when the rate of inflation is more than the interest rate, then only the real interest will come down?
No. Any time inflation is there means real interest rate is coming down. What is real interest? You can write one line there. Real interest, real interest or real rate of interest. Real rate of interest equal to nominal. Now you can understand these words, no? After the first module, nominal rate of interest minus inflation. So let's suppose you are charging, let's say 12%, or bank is giving you 12% in the fixed deposit, but there is 10% inflation. So effectively, what is your real interest? 2% only. So this is how real interest is calculated.
Okay.
So this is how, no, like let's suppose there are two people, like bank and, or this is a creditor. Let's say, I'll tell you what is the impact on creditor and debtor. So creditor is giving loan to B. So here who is the creditor? A is the creditor, B is the debtor. Okay. So let's say this loan is at 10%. Okay. And the loan of, let's say 10 lakh. So he will pay how much after 1 year? 11 lakh, right? So okay, he will pay 11 lakh back after 1 year with the 10% interest. But if there is a 10% interest, what I'm saying is this A with 1 lakh, whatever could have bought in that particular year, exactly the same items he can buy with 11 lakh in this year. So effectively there is no return if there is 10% inflation is there. So that's what you mean by real interest. So in this case, real interest is 0 if inflation is 10%. If inflation is 9%, what is the real interest? 1%. If inflation is 8%, what is the real interest? That is 2%. Okay? So, okay, now one more case. This was also a prelims question. In case of inflation, who will lose? Creditor or debtor? Who's the loser here? In case of inflation?
Creditor, sir.
Creditor or lender. Creditor or lender is the loser. You can write there, this was actually asked as a prelims question. And in case of inflation, what about the debtor? Debtor or the borrower will gain. Borrower or the debtor will gain. So actually the question which was asked before in 2015 was this impact of inflation on bondholders. Impact of inflation on bondholders. Bondholder means you are creditor or debtor?
Creditor.
You are creditor, you are bondholder, you hold the government security means you are the creditor, you are giving money. So what is the impact on bondholder during inflation? Will you gain or lose?
Lose.
You will lose. Okay, so impact of, this is how the questions are framed and this is how the question is asked. So first of all, here you need to know bondholder means debtor or creditor. So it is creditor. Then you need to know creditor and debtor, what is the impact during inflation. So creditor or the lender will lose. So the bondholder will lose. Okay. Now why the gold import is increasing? What is the reason? What is the real reason for increasing gold import? And there are
Increase in inflation.
gold import is because of inflation. Why because of inflation gold is imported? See, because of inflation, what is actually happening? The real rate of interest is coming down, right? Real interest is coming down because of inflation. So when the real interest is coming down, you will not be motivated to invest in the financial instruments or financial investment. So financial investment will be discouraged. Financial investment will actually come down. So what people will do, people will make the physical investment. Physical investment means it could be gold or real estate, etc. So that is the reason why the demand for gold is increasing. Demand for gold is increasing, but 99% of the gold is actually met by import. So what will happen now? Import will increase. So when import will increase, what will happen? Now these all are connected to inflation. So gold import, because of inflation lead to gold import. So import increasing means what is the impact on rupee?
Rupee depreciates.
Rupee depreciate because you need to make the payment in dollar. When you're making the payment in dollar, demand for dollar increasing, right? So that is what we have discussed yesterday, or every time that is what we are discussing actually. So this is the demand for dollar and this is the supply of dollar. So here you can see the price. Okay, so this is the current situation. Demand for dollar increasing means you can see the price of dollar is actually increasing. Let's suppose 65 to 75. So this increase in price of dollar is what you call as rupee depreciation. So inflation lead to rupee depreciation also. And that is the reason why to control inflation and to check rupee depreciation, RBI is doing the same measure to cut the interest rates, to cut the money supply, and so that you can control the demand, so that you will cut down the inflation and also problem with depreciation. But you will be compromising the growth. Okay, now what is the government effort to compromise? I'll slightly deviate and I'll explain about these three measures which is introduced by government to solve the problem of gold import. So what have been done by government? There was a inflation indexed bonds. See, the problem is with bonds, right? Bond, the return is very less and inflation is there, then you may get nothing. So it was actually inflation index bond is actually introduced in 2013. So here the interest upon this bond is actually the 1.5% plus inflation. So for sure you will get 1.5% return. There won't be any situation that you will end up in loss. So this is actually inflation index bond. So you can buy the inflation index bonds. So this is actually adjusted as per inflation. So let's suppose inflation is 10%, the return will be 11.5%. So that is what inflation index bonds. It was introduced in 2013. The actual name is inflation index national savings certificate. Okay. So when this will, what is the objective of introduction of this? When this is there, demand for gold will come down, right? Demand for gold will come down. So import will come down, import bill will come down, so payment in terms of dollar will come down, so demand for dollar will come down, so rupee appreciate. So this is one measure, not to control inflation but to control the gold import, the demand for gold, because people are demanding gold as investment, not to use as ornament. Okay, because a financial instrument investment is weak, you are getting nothing. So people prefer gold. See, when I'm talking about inflation index bonds, means normal bonds, inflation is not considered. For example, let's say 7% interest return you get from bonds. Now, if there is in 7% inflation, actually you get nothing. Real interest is nothing. But when it comes to inflation index bonds, it is adjusted according to inflation. For example, this is how the rate 1.5 plus inflation. So if inflation is 10%, the return will be 11.5% finally. So that will solve the problem of gold import. That will reduce the demand of gold, because gold mainly demanded as investment, because you are not getting any return from the financial investment. Now you are getting the return, so you won't demand gold. Why unnecessarily paying making charge and all those things? Okay, so the import of gold will come down, so the demand for dollar will come down, rupee will appreciate. So that is one thing to reduce the import of gold. Second, with respect to this is, you can write the second one, to decrease the gold import, sovereign gold bonds. Sovereign gold bonds. So basically here, instead of physical gold, you can buy this. So minimum there is a 2 gram requirement, minimum 2 gram, maximum 500 gram. So you don't want to buy gold. If it is for investment purpose, why you buy gold? If you are buying gold, you need to import that. Okay, here, and import bill will increase and that create problem. If it is for investment, you can actually buy this bond. So it is like exactly the gold price, let's say 10 gram. Let's say 10 gram, this is a sovereign gold bond, 10 gram. If 1 gram is 2,500, 10 gram will be 25,000. Okay, so this is the same value of gold. So if you keep this bond, after maturity you will get the gold value exactly like what you buy in case of gold, plus interest also, approximately 2% interest also will be provided in this. So this is also introduced basically to discourage the gold import. And here, if this advantage is here, there is no problem with purity, quality, quantity, etc. But the only thing is that you can't use it. If it is gold, you can use it, but if it is solely for investment purpose, there is no point in importing, and that is creating a lot of other issues also. So better you keep this bond, and then you don't want to worry about the making charge. You don't want to worry about the quality of the gold, okay, etc. So when you're doing this, demand for gold will come down, so import will come down. So the objective is basically to reduce the import of gold. Is this clear? Third one, you can write gold monetization scheme. Gold monetization scheme. So basically you can keep the gold with banks. There will be gold accounts and you can keep it with the bank. Okay, so the bank will give you a certificate. So banks, you can start a gold account, and the certificate you get, and there will be a government center. You can deposit this in the government center, okay, and you can get an interest up to like approximately around 2.5%. Now upon maturity, so there will be a maturity, during maturity you will get this interest and you will get the gold. You will get the gold back, or if not this gold, you will get the equal amount of gold. Equal amount of gold. See, the idea here is the government can use this gold to meet the demand for actual ornaments, etc., without importing. So the problem is you may not get the same gold that you have kept in the gold account. You may get it, you may not get it. So there is no guarantee that you will get the same gold, but you will get the equal amount of gold and you will get the return interest also. So the problem is with the emotional attachment with the gold and everything. See, for example, when we talk about land revenue settlement or land reforms, land and gold, these are the two things which is having a lot of emotional attachments. The problem is there. So here this is not that successful because of that particular reason. Okay, because you are not getting the exact gold that you are keeping in the gold account. You may get some, you will get the equal amount of gold, there is no doubt in that, but you may lose the making charge. That is one thing. Secondly, this is the advantage, you'll get some return. So what is the advantage for the government? Because government, to meet the other genuine requirement of gold for the marriage and other purposes, government can divert this gold rather than importing gold. So that is the advantage here. It was not successful because of sentimental reason. Okay, the people have emotional attachment with the gold. Secondly, that making charge. When you are buying the gold, around 4-5% minimum you need to pay making charge. So when you are doing this thing, you will be compromising on the making charge. So because of these two, it was not successful. Okay, is that okay? Any doubt here?
So what is this government center here?
No, government center, this is for this particular purpose. For this, they keep the certificate over there, and to keep that certificate, just give the certificate and will register it in the computer, and then you can get it back anytime, like that.
Okay, sir.
So now we'll go back to inflation. We were talking about the impact of inflation. We discussed about positive impact and negative impact, and we were talking about negative impact. At that time, I've told you one of the impact is investments in gold is increasing, so import of gold is increasing. So in that context, I've given you these three schemes to control the import of the gold. Now we will go back to that particular discussion. We were talking about impact of inflation. In that negative impact of inflation, write the next one, fifth one, right? 4 we have done. This is the fifth one, so you can write the fifth one. A high rate of inflation retards economic growth. A high rate of inflation retards economic growth as it induces government to adapt, adopt which policy, contractionary or expansionary?
Sir, contraction.
Contractionary. Monetary policy or fiscal policy?
Monetary policy.
Both contractionary and
Contractionary monetary policy.
Monetary policy as well as fiscal policy. Within fiscal policy also contractionary and expansionary is there. Okay, when you are going for fiscal stimulus like reducing taxes, increasing expenditure, that is expansionary. Contractionary fiscal policy means increasing taxes, cutting down the expenditure, that is contractionary. So within monetary policy also expansionary and contractionary is there. Within fiscal policy also both are there. Okay. So government should, what we were talking about, yeah, as it induces government to adopt contractionary fiscal and monetary policies. Okay. Next point you write, it distorts resource allocation. It distorts resource allocation. That is, it diverts resources towards high profit areas. It diverts resources towards high profit areas. You understood this? Can anyone give any example here? It distorts resource allocation. That means it diverts resources towards high profit area. See, when there is an inflation, people will shift to high profit area. That's what. For example, let's consider two firms, A, B. Okay, let's say A is producing a marker and B is producing a pen, this pen. Okay, so the cost and tax including, let's suppose cost and tax including, it is 9 and 9. Okay, and then it charges a profit of, let's say 1. So what is the market price? Market price will be 10 and 10. Okay, Now let's suppose there is inflation. So because during inflation, it is not necessary that everything will increase, right? So let's suppose the price of marker is increased to 14 and the price of the pen is actually increased to 10 or the remain 10. So now if you see the profit, what is the profit here? Can you tell me? This 9 to 14 there is a 5 rupee profit, and 9 to 10 the here only 1 rupee profit. Okay, so what this B will do is, this person, he will start producing marker. He will start producing marker, but he is not having any experience in producing marker, so he may not be that efficient as A. So he may take some more, that is, let's say 11 rupee in the production. Okay, you got it. And the marker actually cost in the market 14 rupee. So what is the profit he can make? He can make 3 rupee. So earlier, if you are producing pen, you are making only 1 rupee profit. Now you are producing marker, that means you shifted to marker, you are able to make 3 rupee profit for each unit. Arey yaar, can you switch off the mic? So yeah, we were talking about marker and pen, right? So when you are producing pen, you can make only 1 rupee profit. But if you shift to marker, now you started producing marker by seeing this person's profit, so you can make 3 rupee profit, and this guy is making 5 rupee profit. The original marker company is making 5 rupee profit, but since B shifted, since he is not efficient, he is able to make only 3 rupee profit. But still you can see he is making profit, and he is making profit than what he would have made in case of pen. So what you can conclude here is, during this time of inflation, even the inefficient firm can also make profit. You can see, you can compare here the actual cost of production. Efficiency is understanding, you can understand efficiency in terms of what? In terms of cost of production. The better the efficiency if the cost of production is less. So A is better, but B is not efficient because cost of production is high, but still B is able to make profit. In which situation? In inflation situation. That's what I mean by distorts resource allocation. Is that clear? Any doubts here? Okay.
So what will be the effect of inflation over taxation structure of the economy?
See, it comes under fiscal policy. So I've told you already, government will go for contractionary fiscal policy. We have already discussed in the previous point. Government will go for both contractionary as well as contractionary monetary as well as fiscal policy, and taxation is part of fiscal policy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, we have already done that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Now, okay. For one more thing, I'll tell you. For example, in this case itself, I have told you moderate inflation is good, right? For example, when you talk about moderate inflation, that means instead of 14. If it would have been, let's say 12, that is moderate. I would say it is moderate. So here, what is the profit? If it is 12, can somebody tell me what is the profit? 3, right? Yes or no?
3.
3 is the profit. Now, do you think this person B will shift to marker? Because B shift to marker, what will happen is his cost of production will be 11 rupee, and when the profit is, or the selling price is 12 rupee, this 12 rupee, what profit he will get? He will get only 1 rupee. And by producing pen itself, he is getting 1 rupee. Why unnecessarily he need to shift? And that means moderate level of inflation is good, and it is considered good for the growth. But high level of inflation, it may lead to distortion in resource allocation. So here there is no distortion in resource allocation. There is no chance that he will shift. Correct, no?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so next point you write. It encouraged generation of black money. It encouraged generation of black money. comma, it increases profit margins. It increases profit margin and tax liabilities of firms disproportionately which significantly discourage voluntary tax compliance. Can anybody explain this point? What I'm saying is, it lead to black money. The reason why it is going to lead to black money is because the profit is increasing. So what will happen? The tax liability will increase. So you won't pay tax. What is the reason? Shivangi, can you tell me?
So because of inflation only.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's the impact of inflation. So why is it happening? Why I'm making
indirect taxes are value based.
yeah.
So because when the industrialists are making more profits, so they don't want to share the profit.
See, when there is
It is a tax.
what is the type of taxation? It is a progressive taxation, right? More the income, more the tax. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And the tax slab also change, depends on the income. Let's suppose, let's say this particular group, let's say 20%, and if you go higher at this range, you may need to pay 30%. So this income, generally, do you disclose? Because you need to pay higher percentage. You will try to reduce your income to this level only. So even if you have extra income, you don't want to pay that extra tax. More the income, it is not just taxes increasing. If it is 20%, still it is okay, but in terms of percentage also it is increasing. So for each 100 extra, you need to pay now 30. Earlier 20 only. So income increasing means you will come in a different tax bracket or different tax slab. So there you need to pay a higher rate of percentage also. So more the income, and the tax liability will increase very much disproportionately. Okay, so what will happen? The firms won't pay tax, so the voluntary compliance of tax will come down. So for example, people who have, generally when we talk about your own income calculation itself, people who have 10 lakh, let's suppose 12 lakh income, so beyond 10 lakh the tax bracket or the slab is changing, and you need to pay 20%, 30%, etc. right? 30% you need to pay, not now, before. So what you will do, if you have 12 lakh income, you will try to show it as 10 lakh only, under 10 lakh. So you need to pay 20% from 5 to 10 lakh, like that. Okay, so I hope this is clear. When the income is increasing, tax liability is increasing very much more. So the voluntary compliance of the payment of tax will come down. So if you're not paying tax, means what? That lead to black money. So that means inflation lead to generation of black money. This was again a prelims question.
So this is the reason of tax evasion, no, sir?
This is also one of the reason of tax evasion, because when the profit is increasing, you have to, you don't want to pay the tax, because higher rate of tax you need to pay.
So even when the taxes are high, the profit is high, the real value of the profit is not that high. That should also be a reason.
No.
Due to inflation.
No. That is not having anything to do with the tax. The real thing when it is connected to tax means the tax slab is different, so you need to pay more tax when the profit is more. So what you are going to do with that profit money is different thing. Whether you can buy more, whether you can buy less, it doesn't matter. You don't want to talk about that.
No, sir, not buying less or sir, I'm talking about.
You are saying almost the same thing. That real value is very less. That is what you're saying. So you don't feel like you're paying tax, right? No, that is not the case. We don't want to discuss that. That is not actually the reason. That has nothing to do with the tax.
Okay. So I was thinking because indirect taxation is ad valorem, so it must have an impact.
Okay, if you're saying it may have an impact, it is okay. It must have an impact, I may not accept it.
Okay.
Okay, it may have an impact. So it may have an impact. So I've told you this point already. Everything is connected, so this is subjective, but we cannot make a direct relation here.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
See, for example, in the previous case itself, if you see the price is increased from 10 to 14, right? What is the increase in price in terms of percentage if you see? What percentage increase in price?
4%.
4 percentage, 4, this is 4, 10 to 14. 40 percentage. So there is 40 percentage increase in price. So I think I have to take CSAT class also for you.
No, sir, 40%.
Okay. So 40% increase in price. So how much is the increase in profit here? What percentage? Earlier 1 rupee, now 5 rupee, right? Earlier 1 rupee, no, 9 was the cost price, and when you compare it with 10, 1 rupee earlier, but when it is 14, 5 rupee. So what is the increase in profit? 1 to 5, what is the increase?
500%.
Why are you not able to calculate the percentage? 400 percentage. See, how will you calculate percentage faster? Just see this 2 to 4 if there is an increase. What you need to do is just find the factor of multiplication. That means just this is 2 into 2 is 4, right? 2 multiplied by 2 is 4, or 4 divided by 2 is 2. So factor of multiplication is 2, just subtract 1, 2 minus 1. So you'll get 1, add 2 zeros, you'll get the percentage change. Similarly, 3 to 21 if you need to calculate. 3, what is the factor of multiplication? 3 into what will give you 21? 7. So 7, you write, that is a factor of multiplication. Minus 1, 6. Add 2 zeros, you'll get the percentage change. Similarly, if you talk about 10 to 1000, okay, what is the factor of multiplication? 100. Or 100 to 1000. So what is the factor of multiplication? 10. So 10 minus 1, 9. So you can say 900 percentage change is there. Or 6 to 9, simple values if you take. What is this? 6 to 9. What is the factor of multiplication? 1.5. 1.5 minus 1, 0.5. Now when you add 2 zeros to 0.5, first this 0.5 will be shifted to the left side, so 5, then second 0, that means 50 percentage, right? So in that context, if you see here 1 to 5, what is the factor of multiplication? 5. 5 minus 1, 4. Add 2 zeros, 400 percentage. Like that. So here if you see 1.4 is the factor of multiplication, minus 1, 0.4. When you add 2 zeros, 40 percentage. So I'm not interested to talk about percentage at this discussion, but just I've told you, since you have made mistakes in 2 cases. Okay, see, this is what I mean by disproportionately increasing. Profit is increased by very huge margin, but the price is even the small change in price can result into huge change in profit. Okay. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
yeah, now write the
Okay, sir.
next point. It promotes hoarding. Next impact, it promotes hoarding and speculation. Why? Why it promotes hoarding and speculation?
So it promotes hoarding because in order to make more profit, the shopkeepers or something, they keep the products with themselves only.
Yeah, logical, because they expect the prices will increase further, right? So the firms will expect that the prices will increase further, so they will hoard or they'll keep that. It is actually a cause and effect. So because of inflation they are hoarding, so the supply is less, again inflation is there, so it's actually a cycle. It is a cause and effect only. So they are hoarding because they are expecting that again the prices will go up. So in the market supply will be less, so automatically the prices will go up. So it is actually a circular issue. It is a cause and effect itself. Okay, next point to write. It deteriorates balance of payment situation. It deteriorates balance of payment situation of the country. As it discourages export as it discourage export and encourage imports which widens the trade deficit and tends to reduce forex reserve. So what I'm saying in this point, can anyone explain this?
So due to inflation, the price of the products will increase and it will be not be competitive in the international market. So the exports will go down.
Yeah.
And due to inflation also, the rupee value depreciates. So the import will be more. So the current account deficit will be.
Use the normal logic. In case of inflation, actually, what will happen? The prices are so high, so you will not export. You will not be allowed to export. We have discussed yesterday. So it discourages export because domestic supply is required. Similarly, when inflation is there, for example, onion price etc. is going up because of the supply problem. So you will import also. So import will be promoted and export will be discouraged. You will not be allowed to export at the same time. You will be importing more. So that widens the current account deficit, trade deficit. Okay, and that will affect the forex reserve. So these are the impacts of inflation. So I hope this is clear. You can get mains question and you can expect a prelims question also. So conceptually they will ask questions from here. I've told you from where you can expect questions. So any doubts? The measurement of inflation we will do tomorrow. I have a class at 9 o'clock. Okay?
So what kind of mains question can we expect from here?
No, directly impact of inflation. Or it is connected to impact of inflation on various sectors of economy, impact of inflation on the unemployment, impact of inflation on the savings of the people, impact of inflation on the import of gold, impact of inflation on the price rise of gold, or impact of inflation on the rupee depreciation. Okay, impact of inflation on the resource allocation. All these can be asked.
Okay.
Okay, so can we stop here?
Okay.
Sure, sir.
So
Okay.
see you tomorrow.
Bye, sir.
Yeah, bye.
Bye, sir.